Emergency broadcast today because something extraordinary has happened. The United States has struck Venezuela and arrested the dictator Maduro. My name is Elvira Bary. I'm not broadcasting from my studio, but from a tiny island at the edge of nowhere, so the sound quality will be awful. Still, I have to tell you how Russians reacted to what happened in Venezuela. Ivan Yakovina, a Russian journalist who supports Ukraine, Trump carried out a special Venezuelan operation in 30 minutes, well, the active phase at least. And Trump pulled it off. I think Putin is reacting very painfully because the special military operation is what he's been living for the last 4 years. Trump showed how it's actually done. I've just been reading Z channels on Telegram. They are practically losing rage and envy. They are intensely jealous of the Americans for pulling this operation off without losing a single person, while the Russian army has been bleeding for 4 years straight. This is a vivid, living demonstration that Vladimir Putin is an utterly inept military leader. Incompetent, talentless, incapable of conducting or planning any serious operations. Simply put, Putin is in the wrong place, a bad commander, and a bad president. Even if we set aside the moral aspect of invading another country, he just does not know how to do it. Oleg Deripaska, one of the most prominent Putin-era oligarchs. If our American partners get their hands on Venezuela's oil fields, and they've already reached those of Guyana, they will control more than half of the world's oil reserves. And apparently, their plan is to make sure the price of our oil doesn't rise above $50 a barrel. Margarita Simonyan, one of the chief propagandists, wrote briefly on Telegram, "We are jealous." Yegor Holmogorov, nationalist and politician. Now either Russia quickly takes out Zelensky or we are really entering a season of Trump-sanctioned hunting for Putin. Dmitry Medvedev, former president of the Russian Federation. Maximum strengthening, guaranteeing that the country will be reliably protected. Only the nuclear arsenal. Long live nuclear weapons. Nizagor, one of the largest pro-Kremlin bloggers for the thinking audience. The text is long but extremely revealing. The US force operation in Venezuela, which ended with a change of power and the detention of Nicolas Maduro, deals a serious blow to the Kremlin's reputation, given that Moscow is losing yet another significant ally in Latin America. First, the overthrow of the Maduro regime sharply reduces Moscow's room for maneuver in influencing the situation in Latin America. Venezuela was seen as one of the key strongholds of Russia's presence in the region and as support for Cuba and Nicaragua. The loss of this direction is perceived as a geopolitical defeat, the probability of which had already been assessed as high. It should also be noted that Venezuela was a full-fledged proxy of China, and Russia used Venezuela's potential as a center for capitalizing its investments. Second, Russia's oil and gas interests in Venezuela are now under question. US control over Venezuela's energy sector enhances Washington's ability to influence the global hydrocarbons market, creating a serious instrument of pressure, including in relations with Russia. After the loss of Syria, just a year later, the Russian elite is losing a second zone for capital investment in oil projects. A separate risk concerns the financial losses of Russian companies, investments of around $18 billion. Another risk lies in possible testimony by Maduro regarding Russian involvement in grey money laundering schemes, including the participation of certain Russians in drug trafficking and arms sales. The informational and political effect of the US operation also attracts serious attention. A fast and effective special operation without losses among American military personnel creates undesirable comparisons and projections regarding the effectiveness of the special military operation. This factor is seen as potentially problematic for the domestic agenda and public sentiment, and will require active adjustment of the information field. At the intra-elite level, rising tension is expected. The change of power in Venezuela strengthens fears related to loyalty and possible betrayals within Putin's inner circle. This, in turn, may lead to heightening hysteria, demonstrative loyalty, and mutual suspicion among elites, with long term consequences for the governance system. Finally, yet another refusal to support a strategic ally, following the cases of Armenia, Iran, and Syria, confirms Moscow's lack of real capacity to actively help its allies. This will lead to a narrowing of alliance ties and Russia's displacement to the periphery of Chinese interests. The Kremlin finds itself tightly squeezed in geopolitical vice grips. As you see, they understand perfectly well. And they also understand something else. If it comes to that, no one will stand up for Putin. That's why they're afraid.